So Loretta, I want to get to women in economics. I studied economics, and I'll never forget my first slightly advanced econ class. I walked in, and out of 100 kids, there were like 9 young women. So your experience is that you were a math whiz who sort of stumbled into economics. And so were you also surprised by the small number of women in studying this subject compared to other social and even hard sciences?
Not really, because back in the day, right, when I was doing math, we didn't even have math professors in Barnard. You had to go across the street to Columbia to do your math courses. So it was, it didn't strike me as being unusual that it would have few women, even though I came from a school like Barnard, which was a women's school. Economics is such an important field. I mean, it touches everyone's lives. Policymakers make policies that touch everyone's lives. Business people, make hiring decisions that touches everyone's lives. So because it's such a broad field and it really is important for everyone, I think it's really important that we have a very diverse group of people going into economics. And, I don't know how you feel, but my own feeling is that we could do better along those dimensions.
Well, you have talked about this. You did a recent speech where you mentioned nudges, and that when you were a young college student, you got a nudge from some very important professors that made you think about leaving math and going to economics. What was that experience, and how does the research look at that more broadly?
Yeah, so nudges are what, basically things that try to, move your decision making a little bit. So my decision was nudged a lot because I did not apply to graduate school in economics. I applied to graduate school in mathematics. I was going to get my PhD in mathematics. And, I applied to Princeton, and I happened to get letters from 2 professors there, Bob Anderson and Hugo Sonnenschein, who said, hey, we saw your application, we know you were an undergraduate econ major and math major. Instead of going into math, why don't you come here and do economics? It's a very mathematical field as Princeton teaches it. And so I did. I mean, that nudged me into changing my whole plan. And I went there and I got my PhD in economics. So they're trying to do some of this experimentation at the undergraduate level to try to get more women to actually major in economics, because one of the issues is that women do not major in economics at the same rate as men. We're only majoring in it at a third of the pace of men. And so nudges are the kinds of things like giving people information about how nice it is to become an economist in terms of either what problems you can help solve or what your financial outcomes will be in terms of wages relative to other majors. And so there's a lot of experimentation going on that actually tests out whether these nudges are effective or not. And there's mixed results. In the session that you mentioned that I was at, the AEA meetings, American Economic Association meetings earlier this week, there was mixed results on whether they work or not. And so there's a lot of work going on to try to increase diversity, not just women, but also minorities to go into economics. And I think we can make progress because if you look at majors like mathematics and majors like other social sciences like psychology and even business, women are much better represented than they are in economics. And those fields are kind of related. Why business versus economics? Mm-hmm. And if you can do business, you should be able to go into economics. So part of it's teaching people what economics is about. And I also think a lot of it is making sure that we start younger, right? Okay. You have to start with kindergarten through high school to really expose people to economics. And the Council for Economic Education, I'm on their board, that's what they focus on, is really economic education at that K through 12 level.
Yeah, trying to encourage my toddler to be interested in macroeconomic concepts with her board books, Loretta.
That's very good.
But, you talk about these nudges, right? And so much of it is also role modeling. And, it's great that young women now can look to yourself, can look to the likes of Janet Yellen and think, right, there are roles at the very top for women in economics globally. Was that the case when you were going through and rising through the ranks? Did you have female role models that made you think, well, more is possible?
No, but I didn't feel a lack of it because I had a lot of men who helped me. You know what I mean? That's the other thing I think it's important to realize. we don't want to wait until it's diversified to say, okay, now we have role models. It's really important to get to that diversity phase. We're going to have to rely on men. We're going to have to rely on them to help women. And that's happening now. And that's the great thing is like, you can just see it happening in the field, the AEA meetings, like the session that I was in, right? Some of the researchers doing this work are not all women. This is now broadening out. So there's a lot of males that are interested in diversifying the field too. And another reason that, we really care is that if you want the field of economics to be growing and to be taking on new challenges and innovating and using new methods and interested in new questions, you need to have diversity in it, or else it's going to become a stagnant field and it could die out. I know that sounds silly, but you've seen that in other kinds of disciplines. And so it's really important that we not think of this as just women helping women. It's got to be everyone helping to diversify the field. And similarly with minorities, we don't have very many African-American Black economists. They just, they're just not going into the field, and we need to do better there as well. I think at the Fed, we have have about 700 PhD economists, and we hire a lot more bachelor's and master's degrees. So we have a vested interest in making sure that the field's diverse because we represent the public. We work for the public, and it's really important that we have all views represented when we're evaluating what's appropriate policy. Just a diverse decision-making is much better decision-making.
Yeah, absolutely. And those views kind of also inform the areas of research that get done and funded and people are interested in too, right? Do you see that kind of, I guess, silos or bifurcation when it comes to what traditionally female economists are encouraged to go into? I know in the past there might be sort of, more representation when it comes to applied labor work or health or education. Do you see a more consistent spread across all areas, including macroeconomics and finance now for women?
Yeah, I think that's definitely changing. And I think you're right. It did seem that women went into certain fields earlier on, but now in every part of the field, my husband is actually a theoretical economist, and there are women theorists, right? So the whole span of areas, including macro, which of course is, a place where the Fed hires a lot of economists, right? It's very much diversifying, and that's all very good, and we need to have just more representation because it's there are a lot of open questions. There are a lot of things to work on, and getting diversity in those kind of the approaches you take to the questions you ask, as you pointed out, you might ask different questions. That is what makes it a vibrant field. And that's really important because the decisions we make affect so many people in the country and in the world, and different, central banks making decisions, different fiscal authorities making decisions. Economics just is touching so many people that it behooves us to do all we can to make sure that we're representing the vast, differences across different people, different locations, different concerns.